Your local radio station.
Senedd Talk Radio.
It's Friday, May the 7th. Welcome along to our coverage of the Senedd Elections 2021. Joining me in the studio today is Gwenoro Jones, former MP for Carmarthenshire and our political analyst. We'll be bringing you all the results as they come in, along with interviews with the candidates involved in the election process.
Your stories, your platform. This is Senedd Talk Radio.
Welcome along. My name's Alan Evans. This is Senedd Talk Radio. Well, there we are. We know these people will only be elected on the backs of the common people. Could they rely on the postal votes? Was there a possibility of future online voting? This has been a very different set of circumstances, and it could affect the result. Gwenoro, how will politicians have been faring on the doorstep amid what has been a terrible year for most people?
Oh, it's been hugely difficult, and as you said, the uncertainty was considerable. The point being, there probably will be far more postal votes this time than ever before. That was inevitable. Safety, social distancing, keeping people away from the polling booths. So postal voting will be a major involvement in the result, I have no doubt. But canvassing itself has been very difficult. It's been, only about 2 weeks or so that they've been allowed to knock on doors. They was allowed to deliver leaflets, but not to speak with the voters. So that's been very, very difficult. And I get the impression, I'm sure it wasn't so for the candidates' mind and their key workers, to say it's a low-key campaign. It looks as if it's a low-key campaign as far as the voters go. But the actual candidates, I'm sure they gave it a good go. But yes, it's totally different style, far quieter, far more peaceful, far more respectful as well, if I may say. You know what I mean? I can think of the times when I fought Carmarthen 3 times with Gwenfor Evans. It wasn't as peaceful as this, I assure you. And that life was not in the campaign, was it? It was not controversial. It was as if everybody understood the enormity of the scene and the situation and the year we've gone through. And that year, let's face it, has knocked the stuffing out of people. And politics has been low down the agenda. You know, villages, communities, families. Last thing on their mind was politics.
A lot of paperwork came through my door. I'm not sure if a lot of it came through your door as well. Do you think people will be taking the time to read these? I spoke to a voter yesterday in Pontiats, and she said, actually, this was interesting, that she was going to vote for David Llewellyn, but she changed her mind because when she read the leaflet he sent, there were grammatical and spelling errors, and she felt that if he could not get his grammar and spelling right, he certainly could not be the Police and Crime Commissioner.
Yeah, that's an old story, that. Candidates and their agents not checking the fine print of what they send out. And yes, mistakes do happen, either at the printers or the original writer of the leaflet. My experience has been that I don't know how much attention people pay to those leaflets. You know, I fought 5-6 elections, and I thought in each one that my leaflets were by far the most informative and best. Well, I won 3 and lost 3. So, I don't know. It's difficult. It's difficult to say the impact. But it's like any marketing, isn't it, Alan? You know what I mean? If you're marketing the business, if you're anyone marketing a business, they're told it's the first 10 seconds that matters. From the door to the bin, in terms of what happens to that leaflet. Do they read that leaflet or not? You've only got a few seconds to hold people's attention.
There we are. Well, a change is going to come no matter what. Rob Allen and A Working Man, a real anthem there, almost giving me goose pimples. Gwenoro, a working man it is, and a working man and woman will be going to the polls yesterday across Wales, and we're waiting for those results.
Yes, but I need to say something about that song. I found that song a bit emotional. Because remember, I was the son of a colliery carpenter. Both my grandfathers worked in either Blaenhyrwyn or Great Mountain Tumble, and then my father eventually in Cynhydre. What that song says is quite true. My father used to tell me many, many, many times when I was in my teenage to make sure that I did well in school at Gwendraith, etc., because I don't want you to go underground. I don't want you to witness what I have witnessed. And it's not natural, he used to say. He used to say that often to me. It's not natural for a man to be underground. And twice I've been underground. Once there was a colliery disaster in Cynhydre when 6 people were killed. And I went down... I was Member of Parliament then, and I went down to the very spot where the accident happened, where the explosion happened. And this was a few days afterwards, and I touched the coal, and it was still hot. It was still hot after the explosion. Sentimental times. I know coal mining was the backbone of Wales, the backbone of employment, but it was a natural thing for the Welsh people to have done. Anyway, so the working man and voting, yes. The working man has moved on, mind. The working man and woman communities more often than not voted Labour. But in the last 30, 40 years, a good 30% of what we call the working class now vote Conservative. They voted for Mrs Thatcher. They voted for Boris. They've voted in Hartlepool for the Tories to win the by-election, the Brexit referendum, and the working man as a folklore thing in our mind has changed. The working man is no longer a traditional Labour voter, and that is what's made politics different.
Let's look then at, you say that the Welsh Assembly was formed 20 years ago, the Welsh Parliament as it is now. In all that time, there's only been a Welsh Labour government. What has the opposition been like? What has the institution been like to observe? Gwenoro, you've got your unique views on this. Tell us how you see the last 2 decades of Welsh government and the opposition.
Well, maybe I'm of the old school, where politicians were radical orators, campaigners in a big way. I miss that in the politics of Wales over the last 20 years. It isn't there. Too sedate, too benign, too gentlemanly. All that campaigning of days of old has gone. That's the first thing. The second thing, the voting system itself, of course, makes it very difficult for the opposition parties to break through. Certainly the 3rd, 4th and 5th parties. The Assembly is made for 2-party politics, and that needs changing. That is why we need voting reform. That is why voting reform will exhilarate and change and enthuse the Assembly. It's not enthusiastic, is it? I have to be honest with you. I hardly ever watch it. Every time I do, I've been there about twice, and I left after about 20 minutes. Because it is so quiet, they're so orderly, so structured, and the speaker, Llywelyn, so coordinates things. There's no freedom there. It's difficult to get your point over because there's a structure. It's a structured debate, a structured assembly, and that does inhibit debating. Open discussion. And if you say something that might be regarded a bit risque or over the top, as they do in the House of Commons, no problems. You know what I mean? Ian Blackford asked Boris last week, do you think you're a liar, Prime Minister? That would never be allowed in the Senedd. It needs to relax a bit. It needs to be active. I don't know how many people watch it on telly or listen or whatever. I certainly don't. I find it boring. And they need to change that. And that also reflects itself in the number of people who turned out. It is difficult to believe why less than half the Welsh people have not voted since it began. Now, why is that? Do they find it's useful? Do they find it makes an impact? Does it draw their attention? And that is why I've said this many times, and I stick with this. There's too much of a club atmosphere in the Senedd. It is too Cardiff-centric, too much of a club atmosphere, and it does not govern for West, Mid and North Wales. That's been my view from the beginning.
OK, we get the message loud and clear that you find it hard to tolerate it. O hyd a bwys y ti o reigra fel ar y mynydd Gwenoro.
Yeah.
Now, the question of Welsh language is one, independence, Welsh language is one that has raged for many decades. Gwenoro, you've written a book on this very subject. Give us a quick painted canvas of the fight for independence in Wales and what that is likely to be, the implications of that today for voters in Wales as they have gone to the polls.
Gosh, what a subject. It took us 2.5 years to write the book, mind. So you want me to do this in two or 3 minutes or 4 minutes?
Not the book, just the kind of how will independence. I just wanted to look at today now and just look at the vote and think, how will people going to the polls be voting? Will they have independence for Wales at the heart of their decision to put an X in the box for Plaid Cymru?
Some will, but not the majority, I have no doubt. And they have already voted. We are here waiting for the result today. They voted yesterday. But the quick synopsis is devolution and the nationhood of Wales, which we cover in this book that's out soon, this week or next week at the latest. It's been a problem. It's been divisive. It's been always an issue. The powers that the Welsh people should have, the power devolution should give to Wales, the strength of the nationhood of Wales. Should Wales be independent? Can it afford to be independent? Is it big enough for country? Now, those last few questions are being addressed more now than ever. The first question is, are we big enough to be on our own? Certainly, yes. You can vote for, be part of the United Kingdom or remain like that as a union. Fine, no problem. But let's not kid ourselves that Wales is too small. There are 7 countries in the European community that are smaller than Wales. We are the 30th in terms of world rankings, in terms of economic development and production. 30th, not 100th. Of course Wales can be on its own. Question is, do the people want it? Is there a desire for it? Do they understand that? We raise more taxes in Wales than what devolution costs. That's the first thing. We give about 11, 12, more than that, billion back to Westminster, to the Treasury every year. Of course, that's to cover defence, welfare and many other things. So it's not an issue of can we afford it. It's all to do with what is the best way of governing Wales, what structure Wales should have, and what is its role within the United Kingdom. And I fear for many years, for a century probably, and more actually, this image of the empire, British Empire, and we are part of this United Kingdom, is waning, is fracturing. It's struggling to survive. That's inevitably. Look what's happening in Scotland. What indeed is happening in Northern Ireland now after Brexit. I would say I probably won't be around unless the good Lord gives me another 15, 20 years. The future of the UK Union is fragile. It's creaking. The question is going to be, what is the future for Wales within that? Can you imagine? This question always hangs behind my mind. If Scotland goes independent, as it probably will over 10 years, maybe not now, within 10 years, because the young people themselves, if 70% of the under 35s in Scotland want independence. Okay, and 60% over the over 70s don't want. But who's going to win? Who's dying quicker? It's inevitable. Northern Ireland will form some union with Southern Ireland. I have no doubt about it. Again, within 10. Right then. question for the Welsh people. Do they still want to be linked with England? Is it still going to be England and Wales? That's the question.
There, Grenora, we tried to get Helen Mary. She wasn't available there.
She's probably on pills and needles,
Very busy, right.
Yeah.
Let's go to that. And London Calling, The Clash was the last piece of music. We hear more about politics in Westminster more often than not than we do about politics in Wales. London is still the centre of the world for decision-making for some. There may be those who believe that a Welsh Conservative government would get a better deal for Wales with the Conservative government set to be in Westminster, possibly for another term. Do you think that would be the case? Do you think we'd get a better deal if the Welsh Conservatives were in Wales?
Well, it's always been the case since back in the 60s and the 70s. There was the argument, if you have a Labour administration in Wales or in local government or whatever, and a Labour government in Westminster, that is bound to be beneficial. There is an argument to be made for it, that should there be a Senedd, which is a Welsh Conservative Senedd, well, of course, the Westminster Tory leadership, Prime Minister and all that, Johnson, would look more kindly towards what the Tory party in Wales is saying. That is natural politics. Whether that will happen, I doubt whether the Tories will win. But that is natural to the game. But you made a point that Westminster dominates. It only dominates because the media is so weak in Wales that we do not have sufficient propaganda, information, news about what goes on in Wales. We'll come to it later on. Remember, 70% of what the people of Wales read comes from Daily Mail, Daily Express, Telegraph, Times, Guardian, Western Mail, Evening Post, South Wales Argus, North Wales Daily Post, are minimal in that situation. That is why Westminster dominates. It's the media in Wales is too weak to compete with that vast weapon, which is the Westminster steamroller of media presentation. BBC, okay, we have BBC Wales, but really, how much of a Welsh context is there to BBC Wales News, for instance? You know, it often will start with a Westminster headline. But no, to go back to your question, yes, if the administration in the two were as one, that obviously would be a much better cohesively and wise than otherwise. Would I welcome that? Most certainly not. I don't want to have Boris Johnson have more influence over Wales than he's got already.
You know that the media in Wales has been struggling, newspapers shutting down, offices closing, things moving further and further east towards Cardiff and London. North Wales, non-existent, mid Wales, you know. We're involved in this. You've seen the struggle for Llanelli Online and Wales News Online and other hyperlocals across Wales as well. Do you foresee the Welsh Government stepping in here at arm's length to offer some help in order that, you know, people can attend the Senedd and report on that, people can go to council meetings, people can hold these people to account? Do you think that we're going to get some help?
Well, of course, just before the election, one of the Senedd committees has recommended that a fund be put up to help businesses like yours, hyperlocals, and other sort of media in Wales. Whether it will happen, I'm not sure, but it needs to happen. The Welsh media needs strengthening. And what I take by the Welsh media, by the way, I don't mean the Western Mail, and I don't mean BBC Wales. I mean at local level, at a level which is independent, needs strengthening. Now, you have set up a system, hyperlocal, and you have set up a system where the 5 regions of Wales get their news coverage on Wales News Online. Now, that is a very good way ahead for the Welsh media in Wales in general. But it needs support. It needs nurturing. It needs seed corn money to develop and grow. I think we'll approach that later when we talk of the manifestos. Every political party in their manifestos said such a thing should happen. Let's see what happens in the next year or so.
Okay, let's just try and call Mary Arthur then and see if we can get her on the phone. She's the agent for Plaid Cymru, and she has stood, I think she stood for Parliament, didn't she, in the last election? Hello, Mary. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
You're live with us now. Are you free to talk?
No, I'm in the count, actually. I'm not sure I'm supposed to be talking. Am I allowed to talk in here?
Yes, you can talk to us. If we'd be there normally as the press, so you're fine to talk to us here.
Okay, I'm happy. I'm with a crowd of people, though, so...
That's fine, we can hear you. So just paint a picture for our listeners to say what's going on there. You know, are you inside, you're outside?
I'm inside the count, and they're still verifying, so they haven't started counting yet.
Are they verifying the postal votes at the moment or the normal boxes?
They're separating all of the different votes, so they're not looking at any one box. They're emptying all the boxes and putting them into piles of postal, regional lists and the Senedd lists, the police and crime and the by-election. So at the moment, there's nothing much to report other than different piles of colours of paper.
Oh, I know, but you're painting a picture for our listeners, Murray. We want to know what's going on. We're not there. None of us are here. You're our eyes and ears at the polls there. You attended the elections down in Selwyn Samuel Centre. Lots of people there, big melee, lots going on. Is it very, very different for this election here now at the count?
The hardest thing is the keeping the social distancing, because obviously when a box is emptied on the table, the standard thing is the different parties come around to have a look to see if they can get a feel for the different numbers coming in. But at the moment, you've got to stay so far away from people. It's like the first two at the table will be the only two who can see anything. So it's a lot more limited in terms of what you can see. And I suppose even when we go into the count later on, when we've finished the verification, it'll be the same thing. There'll only be 2 or 3 people that will get sight of any one box that's counted. Have they given you any indication of time? Are we talking about 5 o'clock? Will they be closing the count? The countdown at a certain time, or is it sort of this will go on possibly into the evening? Yeah, I suppose it depends on how close it is. So if there's a close, if the numbers between the parties are close near the end, there will be recounts going on, and that could take another few hours. And I'm sure is your Plaid Cymru pimped car out in the car park there, or is it not allowed? It's not my car. I wish it was. Yeah. I have asked if I can buy it. Have you? Right, okay. And a registration number plate PLA 1D or something like that, is it? I'm not sure, actually. There is a PLAD one. I know there is, in Pontyberem, In Pontyberem, That's right, yeah, we've seen that one. So are you optimistic? How's Ellie Mary faring? Is she looking a bit cheerful and optimistic? Has she got the feel for it? Well, we've had a really positive campaign, and everyone's been quite excited. Yeah. And I know every party will be living in their little bubble, and you'll see algorithms on social media for your own party. So you can't really go on anything until the numbers come through today. But there are so many youngsters coming through saying they're voting Plaid, and so many people coming through saying they're voting Plaid for the first time, that it has given us this hope that, we are going to take it today. So it's still feeling quite optimistic. But like I say, I am aware we do live in our bubbles, all of the parties. Yeah. We've got Gwenoro Jones in the studio with us. So we'll leave Gwenoro to ask you a quick question, if I may. Yeah?
Well, the only thing, Barry, is from my point of view, when you say it's different, it must be vastly different, surely. There must be many fewer of you here than in a count like yours last time. Aren't there? Or are there a good number of people? Each party's representatives must be considerably lower, mustn't it? Yes, you're only allowed restricted numbers. Yes. So you're only allowed one counter in at a time for different candidates. Obviously, then they've got the counters for the regional list as well, and then you've got the candidate and the agent. So the candidate and the agent are allowed to come in and out, but the counters are very, very limited. So
that's another restriction as well. It's not just restricting who can stand at what table. You've only got one person that can cover all the tables as well.
That's right, and covering, and I suppose, guessing when the result will be is anybody's guess, isn't it? It is really. Could be 4 o'clock, could be 5 o'clock. And as you said, on recounts, well, I'm the expert on recounts, mine. I had 5 back with Gunvor Evans in the 70s, and we didn't finish until 10 o'clock on the Friday night. Could well be if it's a close thing. The recount,
I think
recount might be tomorrow morning. Yeah,
I think it will be close. I think it will be. The gut feeling is that it's going to be close between Plaid and Labour.
Well, yes,
and that could have.
What was it, 300 or 400 last time?
Yeah, exactly.
But you have no idea at the moment. Obviously, all they're doing now is just counting the boxes. How many have voted?
Yes.
Do you know roughly?
All the piles.
Have you got any indication on turnout, or is it far too early?
No, I haven't. Sorry. No, I haven't. I haven't asked for turnout. I know the postal votes for I know the postal votes for Llanelli were about 80% return.
Oh, right. There we go. Anyway, enjoy the day.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary, for speaking to us.
You.
And we'll catch you later on, maybe when you get a better idea of how many X's are there for Helen Mary Jones. Diolch yn fawr chi.
Will do. Diolch. Ta-ra.
Your local radio station.
We are Senedd Talk Radio.